What is cost allocation and how do you allocate costs by department within an organization? Well, to start with, cost allocation is simply the process of identifying, aggregating, and assigning costs to cost objects. Okay, so what are the costs that are being assigned? First, you have direct costs, which are material and labor that is used in the production or value delivery process. Okay, so these direct costs are easily allocated to whatever object you identify. Indirect costs are a little bit harder. They're things like overhead, which aren't generally used or incurred by a particular operating unit. It's incurred overall by the organization really just to exist. So you have to allocate some portion of this cost to the different operating units that produce some level of value or output so that you can account for that cost as part of the value that you bring back in, which is generated there in the operating unit. Okay, so that's cost allocation, right? You're allocating costs to activities, undertakings as part of the organization. Now, a cost object is anything that you seek to attribute cost to. This could be a division of the company, which in this case we're talking about departments. It could even be an activity or a specific job or something like that. Okay, so job costing is a type of cost allocation where you allocate things to job. Process costing is where you allocate things to a process that's undertaken, which is oftentimes a process undertaken by a given department. Sometimes a department undertakes various processes, so you would collect all these costs together by all the activities that the department undertakes. Okay, now what you generally have to do is you have to identify all of the overhead costs, because these are the things that are generally not direct costs that are related directly to the activity of the unit, and you have to divide these by some activity driver. That is, you're trying to get an individual unit that you can say, okay, if this amount of this unit is present, it accounts for this percentage or this amount of the overhead cost. So you would allocate the overhead cost based upon the presence of that activity, and we call that an activity driver. Okay, so there are numerous cost allocation methods, right? You can base it upon, say, sales of the organization. All of these are activity drivers. Profits, headcount, direct labor hours, machine time, square footage of the organization employed, specific activities undertaken. So the cost is going to be allocated based upon this. So any of these things that you identify as being the activity driver for the department to which you're allocating costs, there you go. You're using that as the metric. The presence of that is going to necessitate the allocation of some cost. Okay, and ultimately what you're trying to do here is determine the total profitability of the department level. If it's not income producing department, then you're trying just simply to identify the extent to which it is using resources or the losses that accumulate within that department. If it is profit producing, you're trying to see the extent to which it is profitable, if at all. So this is allocating costs by department.